And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us once again. MLB season is underway. We've already have 2.5 weeks now of the season already gone through. Some headlines have already emerged anyway. A lot of injuries on the pitching side. A lot to get into. Thank you so much for those of you who have decided to join us once again. I know we had a little bit of a layoff there, a lot going on. We'll get into some of that later on, but really wanted to get into the MLB season. Did a video last night on the NBA playoff bracket and our predictions for that. And we're going to have some live video for you guys pretty much 2 or 3 nights a week, at least until my voice gets all the way back. So appreciate you guys joining us once again. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Without further ado, let's get underway. Alrighty, so the standings as they are right now will start in the AL East. New York Yankees currently been playing great baseball as of late anyway. However, they've lost 2 in a row. They're 12-5 here on the young season. Aaron Judge has not been Aaron Judge as of yet. I think he's only hitting around 200 at the moment. But they have absolutely played significantly better than I think even their fans could have hoped for right out of the gate. You saw the injury issues they had last year. You thought, sure, they'd get a little bit better. Sure, they weren't as bad as they were as they ended the season last year. But the Orioles are still in their division. The Rays are still in their division. Red Sox were going to be in the cellar. We at least thought that coming into the year. Toronto's still trying to keep things going, trying to keep this thing on the rails before they start having to jettison some pieces like Vlad Guerrero as they get more expensive. This was going to be a difficult division, and for the Yankees to come out on top, at least so far, speaks volumes for where they could go this season. Do I think they ultimately win the World Series? I do not. I still think they're a little short, but they definitely improved their chances, at least offensively, bringing in Juan Soto. They did improve their pitching staff. I will give them that. Another year of a healthy Carlos Rodon should help them as well. But I still think they're a little short on the pitching side of things, especially when you consider the trade that they made to bring in Juan Soto. They traded away Michael King to be able to do so. I still think they're going to have to add at least one more starter and probably 2 bullpen pieces at the deadline. So not exactly an insurmountable thing for them to be able to get done. But Brian Cashman looks like he might have pulled another genie out of the bottle, if you will. Rabbit out of his hat to be able to get this thing on the right track early this season. 12-5, great job, Aaron Boone. Baltimore, they are absolutely one of the best teams in the entire league, not just in the American League. We're talking about all of Major League Baseball. Really love the acquisition of Corbin Burnes. He's had some up and down performances as of late. It's an early season, so far for him, but I would say that having an ace like him healthy when we get into August, September, October baseball, that's where the difference will be felt for Corbin Burnes. I don't think you're going to feel it over the course of 162. I think the difference really shows itself once you get into postseason or pennant race baseball. Having that guy that you can go out there on the mound and say, hey, boys, today's win day. They had some great performances out of their starting rotation last year, but none of them are to the level or impact or ace level performance of a Corbin Burnes. Now, do they get a long-term deal done before the season ends? I don't believe so. I think he goes into free agency and does very well in free agency. I think the Orioles probably have the inside track to be able to retain him as well, considering the majority of the roster is very cheap and on rookie contracts at the moment. So, kind of keep your eyes peeled for the Orioles over the next 7, 8, 9 years. But for right now, they certainly look like one of the best teams in all of baseball. Boston playing a little bit above their heads, but they're, 1 game above 500 right now, 3 games back of the Yankees. I would say it's a good start for them, but I would also say don't take this as a sign of things to come for Boston. This is a little bit of fool's gold. They've, played better than I would expect them to going into the season, sure. But I think we're going to see them kind of come back down to earth a little bit. They're very light on the pitching side of things. I would expect them, as the season goes along, to really have that lack of depth in that starting rotation show. Tampa Bay Rays, what can you say about the Rays? They've had some off-the-field concerns with Wander Franco. They've had some injury issues with McClanahan. This is a team that I would expect to still be around the wild card hunt, but I do not consider them a favorite to win the AL East. They're still always going to put together a great pitching staff. They're going to figure things out in the long run. They are going to platoon. They're going to be able to get the most out of the pieces that they have. Players who might hit 200 over the course of a season for any other team might hit 240 because of how the Tampa Bay Rays utilize them. So, Maybe Yandy Diaz is going to have another great, batting title worthy season. I don't see that per se happening, but I do think they're going to be a very good team. I would say they're going to be contenders for the AL wildcard. Last team in this division is the Toronto Blue Jays. They've been decimated by injuries early here. Danny Jansen is about to come off the IL if they haven't already announced that today. But this is a team that really needs to put things together this season. You look at their record right now, they're a game above 500. This is a very tough division. I'm not saying it's not winnable. I'm not saying that it's, theirs for the taking either. I do think that Toronto is going to easily be in that wild card contention race. And if the Yankees start to falter or don't pick up the pitching that they need at the deadline, I think I think the Orioles are going to probably be right there along with the Blue Jays and Yankees. But this is going to be a great race all the way down to the finish. It's a 162 game season. We're 17 games in, but so far you got to like the returns for all 5 of those teams. To the AL Central, basically a division that everybody looked at this and said, what? None of these teams necessarily have the firepower of other teams in other divisions, like the Rangers who just won the World Series, the Astros who have won multiple World Series now. You look at teams like the Yankees who have the pedigree, the Orioles who have all that young talent. Blue Jays, everybody thought they'd be better than they have been over the last couple of years, and they just really haven't put it together. But there's no team like that really in the Central. Everybody basically just said, I guess the Twins. They still have a good team. They pared down payroll, lost some starting pitching. I still think they're a good team. 6-9 early record doesn't really show it. Some good performances, however, from Cleveland and Kansas City really are setting the world on fire right now, along with the Detroit Tigers. Those 3 teams, Cleveland, Kansas City, and Detroit, all playing a little bit above their heads. I'm not saying they can't sustain this, but I am saying it's a little bit surprising to see Minnesota in the 4 spot in this division. We'll start off with the Cleveland Guardians. Cleveland 11-5 so far, 7-3 in their last 10. Looking at their run differential, they're plus 35. Usually the way they get things done is with pitching. Mark, glad to see you're back here. Spoke about you last night anyway with the well wishes you'd sent us, and really was very helpful. So really appreciate the support you guys give us. But looking at Cleveland anyway, they played a ton of games so far early on the roads. They're 8-2 so far. I'd really like to see what this team looks like when we get to the trade deadline. Do they decide to add around the periphery of this team? Maybe give them one more bat? But early returns for Cleveland are looking good. Kansas City made significant improvements on that roster, all around that roster early. Starting rotation was improved, bullpen was improved, lineup got a little bit of help as well. This is a team that's going to play significantly better than a 60-win ball club, which is basically what they've been for an extended period of time now. The Royals are looking to kind of improve their floor, if you will, and the prospects they had been banking on for the better part of the last 3 or 4 years really kind of haven't worked out, and so they had to do something different this year. They needed to get some juice back into that market. They certainly did that. Surprised a bunch of us with the free agent signings they did get done. They're 10-6 here, and Bobby Witt Jr. is absolutely the engine that gets things going for them. Cole Ragans, the big addition they made last year in their Aroldis Chapman deal. Who would have thought he would be the ace of that staff? He has been that good for them since the trade. 10-6, they're off to a flying start here. I'm not saying they're going to drop out of the race either. I really like the Royals this year to at least remain in it until we get to at least August. If they're still in it then, it's the Central. No team is going to run away with this thing. We could see the Royals battling the Tigers or the Twins or the Guardians for the winner in this division. Twins, 6-9. They're going to take a little bit of a step back and have already. They got Angel Hernandez already this season. A lot of teams already got Angel Hernandez this season. The Rangers, the Yankees, the Twins. Basically, every single game he's behind the plate for, it's an absolute adventure. Baseball needs to solve that. We'll dig into that after we get through all these teams here, as well as the injury issues. But boy, the Twins, they lost a couple of starting pitchers. They tried to piecemeal this thing together towards the back half of the offseason, and it just looks like an incomplete team. Carlos Correa signed there for significant money, and they seem to basically reach their limit payroll-wise as to what they're comfortable with. And they offload a little bit of salary and got other teams to take on some salary. I just don't see the Twins really vying for greater contention, if you will, than they were last year. Best case scenario, they finish a little bit above 500, and they're right there at the the final week trying to compete for the division crown. Last team in this division, the Chicago White Sox. They're absolutely in a full rebuild. They are very likely to trade Eloy Jimenez at some point. I would expect him to be one of the big bats available at the deadline. The one big piece that they have left to trade after the Dylan Cease move is Luis Robert. I really like his production that he gives. I love how athletic he is in the outfield. The question is, can he stay healthy? He loves to show that athleticism, but he's banging into walls, those kinds of things, and that ends him up on the IL. That's a problem for a team acquiring him and acquiring that bat. They got him for another 2 years. He's a great player. He's probably going to be had at a premium price at the deadline or after the season. But the White Sox are in full rebuild mode. It's about getting veterans to possibly be flipped at the deadline. They signed Mike Clevenger, I believe, back on a 1-year deal. They are looking to possibly offload him at the deadline. They got a lot of veterans in there on 1-year deals that they can flip if they're having productive seasons, which is going to jumpstart that farm system as well. So really like what the White Sox have decided to do. They've committed to a path here. They're not one of those teams sitting in the middle just saying, hey, with 500, maybe we sneak into the back half of the playoffs and we make a run to the World Series like the Diamondbacks did last year. I really like the White Sox being able to recognize that this is not their time. It hasn't worked. Injuries, poor performance, whatever the case may be, it just didn't work out with this group. And so they're going to tear things down all the way to the studs, much like the Astros did several years ago along with the Chicago Cubs. Looking at the AL West, you guys know I'm a huge Rangers fan. Absolutely loved watching them win the World Series. I've only gotten to watch I'll count three. Three of my favorite teams ever win a World Series, an NBA Finals, or a Stanley Cup. I barely remember the Stars winning the Stanley Cup because I wasn't a huge hockey fan back then when they won it. I've seen them get to the Stanley Cup final since, and that was absolutely fantastic. Huge Mavericks fan, got to watch them finally raise the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Got to watch the Rangers win the World Series for the first time in my lifetime. And honestly, I'm hoping they can do it again. But early returns, they're 9-8. Got a win today, a 1-0 shutout. Michael Lorenzen making his debut for the Rangers, 5 shutout innings, 4 strikeouts. Rangers basically went cheap on things this offseason because their regional sports network deal. Everybody was thinking Jordan Montgomery would be the guy they ultimately bring back. We'll put a pin in that conversation for later on as far as pitching injuries and those kinds of things when we get later on in our chat here. But I really like what the Rangers did with the money they had to work with. They improved their starting rotation by adding a couple of arms there. They're going to get reinforcements at some point, probably in the middle of May, it sounds like, with Max Scherzer. You're going to have Jacob deGrom back probably in mid to late July, maybe even early August. And then you're going to have him down the stretch run. Now, of course, they could always get injured once again, but right now they already have 5-6 starters on the roster right now. They have a couple more in the minors who are likely to be brought up at some point as kind of depth options over the next couple of weeks. And as far as the injured starting pitchers that they're going to have bringing them back at some point, they could have at some point 10 to 12 starting pitchers on this roster. And starting pitching, as we saw last year, you can never have enough of it. In fact, I would say the Rangers might be the one exception to this, because if things work out for them, if the Rangers are able to get those guys back healthy and they're able to demonstrate the ability, to stay healthy as we get down the stretch of the season, they could ultimately flip some of those guys at the deadline. Say like an Andrew Heaney. If there's no longer a spot for him in the rotation, they could flip Andrew Heaney, save the money on him, bring in another piece that they need at the deadline, a bullpen piece. Mark, good mentioning that one. Yates, Robertson for saves. Leclerc obviously has struggled early parts of this year. Spores has injured himself. Brock Burke has been struggling as well. Had punched a wall after his last outing against the Houston Astros and broke his hand. He'll be out for a significant period of time, probably going to end up on the 60-day IL before things are all done. They've had a number of injuries on the position player side as well. Nathaniel Lowe starts the season on the IL. Josh Young looked like a really good hitter early parts of the season. Really looked like he had advanced himself in the offseason, recovering from an injury last year. Played in the postseason, obviously, but wasn't himself. Had a full offseason to stay healthy. Then comes into camp, had his calf strain, etc. Missed a little bit of time again in spring training, and then takes a ball off the wrist, breaks his hand. Or breaks his wrist there. He's out 8 to 10 weeks. He's on the 60-day IL right now. Probably going to return early June at this point. And boy, the Rangers have already been hit hard by the injury bug. But you look at where they are right now, they're still on top of their division, my friend. 9-8. I'm not saying they're world beaters, but right now they're treading water, and their offense has been absolutely abysmal in the early parts of the season. They're getting blow-ups out of their bullpen, much like they were last year. Some big-time issues that they're going to have to solve, but they certainly have the pieces once they get healthy to be able to solve them. You mentioned Yates and Robertson for saves. One of them is going to have to probably go back into that ninth inning role right now. If I had to guess, I would guess Robertson probably gets the first crack at that because he most recently closed games out of the two of them. They still have Jonathan Hernandez recovering from injury. He's likely to be back here in the next week or two. Michael Lorenzen, with his addition into the starting rotation, they're going to have to put one of those guys either on the injured list that's currently in the rotation, or they're going to move one of those guys to the bullpen. They moved Cody Bradford, who was in the starting rotation and by far their best starter outside Eovaldi until his start against the Houston Astros anyway. Bradford had been brilliant for them. Everybody had questions about his ability to maintain that number 5 spot in the rotation, or should they have brought in a guy like Jordan Montgomery? Well, he proved all the doubters wrong. I'm wondering if this is a little bit of a roster management issue more than anything else with the IL stint for him. Just making sure everything is healthy and stays good on him for the remainder of the season. Just making sure nothing starts now and festers all season long, so by the time you get to August, he's been compensating for this injury and then something major happens. I think that's more the issue with Cody Bradford right now. I haven't heard anything other than just precautionary issues for him. But hopefully he gets back on the mound. Rangers really need that production right now, especially with their offense really struggling. This offense, definitely when things are clicking for them, they're going to be a top 5 offense. I do not have any issues with what they've done so far. Wyatt Langford probably going to be in the top 2 or 3 vote getters for Rookie of the Year, along with Evan Carter. We saw last year, Shohei Ohtani won the AL MVP. 2 Rangers finished 2nd and 3rd. I think the Rookie of the Year race is going to do something very similar. One of those two is probably going to have to outperform the other in order to be able to get the job done to win the award. But right now, I think the Rangers are likely to have 2 of the top 3 vote getters for AL Rookie of the Year. Both of those guys, I'm expecting big seasons for. Josh Young, once he gets back, should be fantastic. They've been starting Walsh at first base. I'm not saying he's a great fit, but he's a stopgap guy. I know the MLB on Fox crew was basically talking up how he's really, corrected things. I'm not really buying it. I think when Nathaniel Lowe gets back and healthy, it will be his spot. So for the Rangers, World Series champions, starting out 9-8, really like where they're at. Angels right now 8-8. They had an early season, team meeting. Ron Washington called it after an 0-2 start, something along those lines. They've certainly righted the ship. They're 8-8. They're performing way better than I thought they would, but this is still very early in the season, and it's Ron Washington. I love Ron Washington as a manager. Absolutely is going to get every last bit of talent out of any player that is on his roster. Really love the guy for that. As far as is he able to elevate that talent beyond those things? Is he able to make the sum of the parts even greater than what the parts actually are? I believe he is that type of a manager, but you look at the roster that they have to work with there and with the LA Angels, there ain't much. And Mike Trout is definitely on the back 9 of his career. This is a team that's probably going to finish in the 4 spot in this division, but I really like what the Angels have done so far. The surprise in the West has been the Oakland A's, much like the Kansas City Royals. They decided to invest a little bit in their team, and it's paying off. Now, don't get me wrong, their offense is still abysmal. Shea Langeliers, I think, is the only piece in that lineup right now that's probably still in the MLB in 5 years. He is a great player as far as a catcher, and if he gets it all, or if he's able to put it all together, we're talking about probably one of the top 2 or 3 catchers in the entire American League. But right now, that team is performing above their heads, 7-9. They did add some good pitching options this offseason. They're likely going to flip some of those at the deadline. The A's really didn't have any pitching last year, and so far, pitching's been the name of the game for them. Run differential for them, -22. Even with their increased performance in the starting pitching market, that offense is just abysmal. And like I said, the only real piece that they have from an offensive side of things is going to be Shea Langeliers, and that's kind of where things are at for them. Seattle 6-10 here early, 3-7 in their last 10, -23 run differential. Houston and Seattle to me are very, very similar, at least early in the season. Both are performing well under expectations. Houston, I'd like to see them get on a little bit of a roll. They're having some injury issues, much like the Texas Rangers. Pretty much their entire starting rotation was on the injured list. Verlander's coming back at some point here. He may have even come back at this point, but he was really close to making his return last I read. Uh, as far as the Houston Astros, it's going to be about them getting healthy and being able to perform a little bit better. Jose Abreu has been absolutely abysmal for them so far. Alvarez looks fantastic, though, and Jose Altuve. So you have those guys at the top. Kyle Tucker is in there as well. They're a good offensive team. They're not nearly as deep as they used to be. They're thin on the pitching side for sure. Um, I'm not saying that the Astros are going to finish in the bottom of the division. I'm not saying they're going to finish at the top. But I am saying they're better than where they are at right now. Same thing for the Seattle Mariners. I really like what they did this offseason, bringing in Mitch Garver. I think he's going to solve some of their issues offensively. They didn't trade away any of their big-time starting pitchers either, any of that young talent. I thought there was some opportunity for them to be able to make some big addition offensively, and Garver really has been it so far. They made the trade for Polanco as well, I believe, from the Minnesota Twins. I think there's more meat on the bone as far as what Seattle is going to be able to do to be able to improve their team at the deadline. They might be the team in the ALS that improves the most at the deadline, and that could ultimately win them the division. We've seen Jerry Dipoto do just enough to win the wild card or stay competitive in the wild card, but we've never seen him really throw all the chips to the middle and say, this is our year. And right now, 6-10 doesn't exactly scream this is our year, but we're 2.5 weeks into the season. Talk to me in about 2-3 months when we're getting close to the trade deadline, and maybe they're 20 games above 500 and looking like the best team in the American League. At that point, if you're Jerry Dipoto, you better shove all your chips to the center. Alrighty, let's move on to the National League. We'll start with the NL East, looking at the Atlanta Braves. They've had a couple of games canceled or postponed anyway early this season. That's why they've only played 14 games, 9-5. They're a great team. They're well constructed. Love their rotation. I think they're a little thin as far as depth beyond that starting five, but they have some good pieces in that bullpen. They have a great lineup that's locked up for years and years to come. Spencer Strider's now on the injured list. He is out for the season after having surgery. We'll get into those injury issues that we've already seen crop up in starting pitching so far this year. But the Braves look like a great team. Now, they're going to have to add some starting pitching. Shane Bieber was one of the options that they had discussed this offseason to be able to improve their rotation. He is out injured. Chris Sale, they brought in, was injured last year. But they're hoping to get something out of him as their fourth or fifth starter. But like I said, love the lineup for them. It's going to be about whether or not they have the pieces to add at the deadline to be able to fill the holes at the back end of that rotation and in the back end of that bullpen once they get to October baseball. So, Philadelphia Phillies 9-8, kind of an up and down start to the season, but really love the way they're constructed right now. They solved their issues this offseason in that rotation by bringing back their own guys, Aaron Nola most notably. Really like what they've done offensively as far as their lineup construction. They're one of the teams on the National League side of things that really doesn't have too many holes. You look at this roster and it's nothing that can't be solved at the deadline with a small bench move here or there or a eighth inning setup guy there. There's a lot to be happy for if you're a Philadelphia Phillies fan to wish and dream upon that this team could really do something once we get to October. New York Mets, this is going to be a little bit of a building year, we'll call it, for them. I don't think the Mets with owner Steve Cohen are ever in a rebuild, but they certainly tore things down at the trade deadline last year, and they're kind of retooling, building themselves up for a big run in free agency this offseason. They're going to make a big run after Juan Soto, along with the New York Yankees, obviously. Sorry, I still got basketball on the mind. But the Mets, 7-8 start, good start for them. And I'm curious to see what ultimately happens with Pete Alonso. Do they invest the money in first base, or do they say, hey, you're not at a premium position, we can let your power numbers go and reinvest that money elsewhere, in starting pitching or whatever they decide to do. But that's something to keep your eyes peeled on if you're a Mets fan as to what approach they take with Pete Alonso after the season. but a good start here early for them. I'm not expecting them to compete for the division crown. I'm not even expecting them to compete for a wild card, but they're still right around 500 so far. Good for them. Now, the Washington Nationals, this is a team that I'm expecting to take a step forward with their younger talent based off of what they've done in previous years. They've really invested in the young guys of multiple systems, Mackenzie Gore, C.J. Abrams, among others. They're going to get some of those top prospects out of their system and into that outfield here this season as well. This is a team that's probably going to finish around that 75-80 win mark. That's a good improvement for them. And then next year, they could possibly compete for a wild card. But for this year, it's about getting those young guys as much experience and as much growth and educating them as much as you possibly can. You're not necessarily worried about win-losses. You're worried about process, approach, those kinds of things. You're not necessarily worried about the win-loss. And maybe they get some of their veterans off of this roster traded at the deadline, and continue to build out that farm system. But Nationals 6-9 so far. One of the worst teams in baseball has been the Miami Marlins, 3-14 to start the season. They were the last team to get a win this year. They are absolutely decimated in that pitching staff. Yuri Perez is out for the year. Alcantara is out for the year. They don't really have much going for them. They could be a team that could trade multiple starting pitchers at the deadline this year, and they have some good young starters in that rotation that could be very valuable to other teams at the deadline. So keep your eyes peeled for what the Miami Marlins do in June and July. NL Central, probably one of the biggest surprises is just how good this division has been. Everybody thought with them trading away Burns, among others, that the Milwaukee Brewers would not be sitting atop of that division. In fact, they are. They're 10-4 right now, along with the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are 11-5. Both of those teams playing, I believe, above their heads. Young talent there for the Milwaukee Brewers. I think is going to come down to earth a little bit, and they'll probably finish around 500. They're never going to finish, around the 70 win mark. They're just too talented for that, but they no longer have those upper end pieces to be able to push them over the top and get them into the wild card. So, great start for them, but I wouldn't bank on them having a World Series run much like the Arizona Diamondbacks did last year. For the Pittsburgh Pirates, really love the additions they made this offseason. A whole bunch of veterans on one-year deals that if things didn't work out, they could flip and see what they could get, which I think they will ultimately do anyway. But this is a team that's 11-5 right now. They have some good pieces coming, Paul Skeens among others, and they still need some starting pitching. They decided to invest in that starting pitching as far as in the free agent market this year, and so far the returns have been good. Run differential for them, plus 24. They're 8-3 away from their home ballpark, so great start for them on the road. I'm really curious what happens to them in June and July when those months start to get a little longer, and just seeing how those teams kind of deal with the ups and downs of the season. So welcome in, Charles. Appreciate you for joining us once again. Really like where the Pirates are at. In fact, they got a couple of my favorite players of my time watching baseball. Martin Perez, one of my favorite players ever. He went on to the Pittsburgh Pirates after winning the World Series with the Texas Rangers last year. 1 year, $8 million, I think he signed for. Raldis, I believe, went there, and really curious to see how Pittsburgh handles their early season success. Whereas last year they started out like gangbusters and then really fell back quickly. Chicago Cubs 9-6. Everybody was picking them to win the division. I still think they're going to be right there coming down to the finish here. Cincinnati Reds, another team I think is going to be right there at the finish. For the Cubs, it's all about, does Cody Bellinger have another good season in him? There was some big-time questions among other teams this offseason as to whether or not he was going to continue to get a little bit better or if he was going to just backslide to what he had been the previous 3 years with the Dodgers. Well, so far, returns look good for Cody Bellinger. Michael Busch trade with the LA Dodgers, he's been fantastic. In fact, I think he just homered once again tonight, the 5th consecutive game that he's hit a home run. And that's the first time a Chicago Cub has ever had a home run in 5 straight games. So, really like to see what he has done tonight. Exactly, Mark, exactly. Charles, would you ever stream one of the NBA games tomorrow night? I would love to do a play-in game, not going to lie. Depends on what our work schedule looks like tomorrow, but I might actually do one of those play-in games as well. So, for the Cincinnati Reds, they were a team that was really young last year, needed to improve around the edges, especially in that pitching staff, and they did that this offseason, bringing in Nick Martinez, among others. Really like the way they're set up. The St. Louis Cardinals, however, they went kind of the grab bag approach, I guess you could say, as far as the back half of that rotation. Lance Lynn, among others. Sonny Gray was brought in. Mixed results so far, 7-9. I'm not saying they've performed poorly, but -9 run differential. Both losing they have a losing record away from their home park. They're losing against teams above 500, and I'm saying as far as the St. Louis Cardinals are concerned, I think they'll beat the bad teams, sure, but I think they're going to struggle against the better competition, and I think the Cardinals ultimately are going to fall back as we get closer to the end of the season. They have some good veterans on this roster. I still think they need to trade them at some point this year if things don't break their way, which I think they will. I think best case scenario right now for a Cardinals fan, you're probably hoping for a third place finish. I think some of those teams are going to backslide that are ahead of them, sure, and it's going to give them hope that, hey, these guys are coming down. We can catch them. We can catch them. Sure, you'll catch them, but the other guys are still going to be above you as well. And I just don't think they have the juice to be able to get it done. Chicago, I really like. Reds, I really like in this division. We'll get into kind of the predictions for the rest of the season after this short little bit. To the NL West. Everybody's darling to win the World Series this year is the LA Dodgers. Just the amount of money they spent on this team. Shohei Ohtani, the best player in all of baseball, is there now. Yamamoto was brought in. Teoscar Hernandez, a guy that you might not think of as being a great addition to this team, has been great for them so far. They do have a really good 1 through 4 in their lineup once again, and Dodgers are going to be good. And I'm just wondering if they're able to continue to be everybody's favorite when they still have issues in the bullpen as far as I'm concerned. They could address that, obviously have their great farm system, be able to get whatever piece they want at the deadline. If Bednar is put on the market, for instance, by the Pirates, obviously they can jump in there. If Diaz is put in the market by the Mets, obviously they could jump in there. Clase has been on the market from the Guardians. Maybe he would be the guy they go after. But the Dodgers, my point is the Dodgers can do whatever they want. They got the money to spend. They got the prospects to trade. They are in prime position to be in contention for a significant period of time. We're talking about a team that's been at the top of this division for 10 plus years now. We're talking about a team that's probably going to be at the top of this division for at least another 8 years. That's 20 years. There's a lot of you guys who aren't even 20 years old right now watching this stream. That's how good the Dodgers are going to be for an extended period of time, and it might even continue past that. So, Dodgers are certainly set up for success. Ohtani's been great for them. Betts has been an absolute, rocket right now. San Diego Padres playing a little bit better than I would have thought. They made the big-time trade for Dylan Cease. Shocked they made that move. I thought this would have been a good retooling year for them. Get those prospects kind of tick upward a little bit. But I guess they are not waving the white flag yet, which I honestly thought they should have done. I thought they were a good enough team to already be in wild card contention without Dylan Cease. With the addition of Dylan Cease, sure, they're still in wild card contention, but by no means does this put them in the playoffs at a wild card spot, let alone winning the division. And that's where I think the loss comes in for the Padres, is just the calculus didn't make sense for the move. Is this going to affect your winning? Sure. Is it going to affect your level to win games this year and get higher, raise your floor up to be able to get above these other teams in your division, let alone the other divisions, and be able to, make sure, cement yourself as a playoff team? No. And that's where I think the miss comes in for the Padres. Arizona Diamondbacks did a great job this offseason bringing in Rodriguez, retooling that outfield a little bit, and then late in free agency bringing in Jordan Montgomery, the pitcher who defeated them in the World Series, to kind of bolster their rotation, give them a great starting five. They do have some issues as far as payroll going forward. They had some extra money, of course, with the World Series money, but I'm just not sure this team is necessarily tenable to win the division, obviously, with the Dodgers. I'm not sure they're guaranteed to win a wild card spot. And this is a lot of money to spend on a team. And maybe they turn around and flip Jordan Montgomery at the deadline to somebody else. We'll get into that discussion as well after this update with the standings right now. But Diamondbacks 8-8 start. I still think they're a good team. I don't think they're a great team, and I don't think they're necessarily a guaranteed playoff team or a wild card team. But I do think they'll be in the mix. San Francisco Giants, another mixed bag start to the season. They invested a little bit of money at the end of free agency. I still think they needed to have done more. I think Farhan Zaidi is going to be bounced from that team after the trade deadline. He's probably going to manage things up until then, and then right after the deadline, a week or two later, you'll see a press release. We thank Farhan Zaidi for his contributions to the Giants organization. We just believe it's in the best interest of our team to go ahead and separate and lead our team into the next great San Francisco Giants era of baseball. And then this offseason, we're going to see all kinds of big-time names bandied about who could go in there. Their biggest issue happened a few years ago. The winter meetings where Manny Machado and Bryce Harper were available. They should have brought in a big-time cog for that lineup. That's the miss. And then it just continued to snowball. The mistakes got bigger and bigger and bigger. They could have had Aaron Judge. They were close to getting Aaron Judge. Didn't get it done. Carlos Correa, among other free agents. Xander Bogaerts. And they basically end up with great value as opposed to name brand, if that's the best, if you guys can understand that. Giants they have some good prospects. They're not a deep farm system, but they have some premium pieces, but they're just not set up for success, and that's going to cost Farhan his job. Rockies, nobody's expecting this team to even hunt for a wild card spot, but 4-13, surprised a couple of teams with some victories early, but 4-13, they're not going to do anything this year. It's about development for them once again. How many times are we going to say this in a row for the Colorado Rockies before they realize either A, they need to change their approach to how they're going about pitching, B, change management, or C, change their GM. Something needs to change. They need to rattle the cage, something, because it just isn't working, and it doesn't look like there's any hope for future success right now with the Colorado Rockies. But let's get into some predictions anyway. We'll go ahead and go division by division. We'll start in the AL East. I got the Orioles winning that one quite handily. I think they're probably going to win it by 5, 6, 7 games. Looking at the Central, I'm going to go ahead and... I don't want to pick everybody's pick, the Detroit Tigers, that everybody's picking in the offseason. My pick that I had on paper before the season is the Minnesota Twins. I'm going to stick with them, even though the returns don't look good early for that rotation. Probably already can put an L on that one for me. If I had to redo my pick right now, I'd probably say the Cleveland Guardians, just because they seem to have the staying power. They have a rookie manager, though, in Stephen Vogt. Can he continue to get the job done? The Tigers have some good management there, but I just think they're a little short as far as the talent on the ball club itself. I think they're getting a little bit young. They have the contract of Javi Baez on their hook. I just don't think they're going to win the division. If I had to redo it, I would probably pick the Cleveland Guardians. Looking at the AL West, you guys know I'm going to go ahead and pick the Texas Rangers. Really love the way their lineup is constructed. Love the depth of pitching that they're going to have. Absolutely love the direction that Chris Young has taken them down. As for the Astros, I think they could be there. I just think that they're too limited in what their options are from a starting rotation standpoint. They're very top-heavy in that lineup. Diaz has been great for them at the catcher spot offensively. Really an uptick over Martin Maldonado, but his game calling is a significant downgrade from Martin Maldonado, and that pitching staff absolutely needs to squeeze every bit of juice that it can out of them. And Diaz, I don't think, is the guy behind the plate to be able to get that job done as well as Maldonado did last year. Jays win it all in 4 games versus Miami. Don't make me laugh too hard. I don't have that strong of a voice yet, Mark. Oh, my. Miami Marlins. No, thank you. All right. Moving on to the wild card in the American League. If I had to go with the 3, I would definitely say Seattle's probably going to end up getting one of those spots. I think their lineup is good. I think that their rotation is what's really going to push them over the top. They get into the postseason. I'm giving them one of the spots. Give me another one to the New York Yankees. They're going to go ahead and lock up, I believe, one of those wild card spots as well. That leaves a number of teams vying for that final wild card. We're talking about the Houston Astros. We're talking about the Blue Jays, the Rays. And we're talking about probably one of the AL Central teams. I don't think the Central is going to get 2 teams in the postseason. So let's go ahead and narrow it down between the Astros, Rays, and Jays. Really like the Jays rotation. I still think they're a little more limited than they have been in years past, both from an offensive and pitching perspective. The Rays just seem to always get the job done, though. And then you have former World Series champions, the Houston Astros. I think the pitching is just not going to be enough for Houston. And the early struggles that they've had, minus 13 run differential, they're a better team than their record, sure. Are they a better team than the Tampa Bay Rays? I believe so. Are they a better team than the Toronto Blue Jays? That's where we start to get a little dicey. I think they have better top end talent, but I think the team is better overall for the Blue Jays. I'm going to go ahead and say the Astros ultimately claim that final spot, and this is where the teardown really begins for the Toronto Blue Jays. With Vlad Guerrero Jr., his contract issues coming up, Bo Bichette, what do they ultimately decide to do around him? This is going to be a winter of change for Toronto. I'm going to go ahead and say the Astros get that final spot as far as an AL wild card. Do I think they get bounced early in the playoffs? Absolutely. Now, out of those teams who ultimately wins the World or gets to the World Series, once again, I'm taking the Texas Rangers. Again, you guys know I'm a Rangers fan, so take it with a grain of salt. If I had to pick somebody else, not the Texas Rangers, I would say the Baltimore Orioles, just because they got Corbin Burns, and I think they can still add more pieces if they decide to. Good on them, by the way, for not including Kowser in that deal for Burns. He's been great for them early this season. On the NL side of things, I'm sticking with the Braves to win the NL East. I just think they're far too talented, even with the injury issues that they've had early this season. To the NL Central, who ultimately wins this division? I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Reds. I think their talent is going to show through. The experience they had last year is going to prove invaluable for them down the stretch. And I think they shored up the issues that they had coming into the year, and they still have plenty of pieces to be able to add around the periphery of this team to make sure they get to the postseason. For the NL West, is it any competition? We're talking the LA Dodgers. They easily get this one running away. Now, who gets the wild card? Giving one of them to the Philadelphia Phillies. I think it's very easy to say that they're probably the easiest team to pencil in that wild card. The NL Central, do they get another team into the wild card? We shall see. If I had to guess, the teams that would be competing for it, I would say the Pirates, the Brewers, and the Cubs would all be right there within 5-6 games of that final wild card spot. Looking at the NL West, you're looking at the Padres, Diamondbacks, and Giants. Giants, I just don't think have enough. I think the Diamondbacks had a great run last year. I think they have a great rotation with Jordan Montgomery, who's likely going to take the ball later on this week in that starting rotation. They have a good lineup. I really like the way the Diamondbacks are constructed. It's going to be tough for them to get in this wild card, though, especially when you consider that they play the Dodgers, they play the Padres, who I think are significantly better teams than others that they could face. And I think that's where their issues are going to have rear their ugly head for them, is that it's just going to cost them a game or two too much to be able to get them into the postseason. I think the Padres, even after the trade for Juan Soto, or trading away Juan Soto and bringing in Dylan Cease, while it didn't necessarily raise their floor as much as they would have liked, I still think they're right there on the playoff picture. I really like their top-end talent in that rotation, and I actually like their rotation a little bit better than the Arizona Diamondbacks. For the Diamondbacks, I love Jordan Montgomery, don't get me wrong. I love Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly as well, Eduardo Rodriguez, but when we're talking about a pennant race, I trust guys like Joe Musgrove, I trust guys like Dylan Cease to be able to figure things out. Never been much of a Dylan Cease guy, but I think he's going to be in a rotation that's going to push him to improve and be better than he was last year with the White Sox. I love Yu Darvish. He's been one of my favorite starting pitchers ever in Major League Baseball history. I'm not saying he's the best ever, obviously, but he's been one of my favorite and most entertaining to watch. He is absolutely great as far as off the field as well. I know Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News had some really good stories back when he was a Texas Ranger. Really kind of embraced the guy at that point and followed his career ever since. Really love the guy, the way he pitches on the mound, the way he deals with the adversity of different situations. Back then, the Rangers had been a World Series team before he had gotten there, and then were really on the back half of that contending unit, and ultimately got traded to the Dodgers. Had some issues in that World Series, obviously. Goes to the Chicago Cubs, figures things out to a certain extent, and then finds his way to San Diego, where I think he's probably going to finish his career, making more money than I think he's probably worth at this point. But the experience, the ability to pitch, the multiple different pitches that he can go to be able to figure things out in any at bat. He is just something to watch. And I know some of you guys probably have never been a Yu Darvish fan, rooted for the Rangers, the Cubs, or the Padres, or the Dodgers, but he is something to watch when you actually get to watch him. He is fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and say the Padres get one of those wild card spots. That leaves you with the Cubs, the Pirates, the Diamondbacks for that, and the Brewers for one of those final spots. I'm going to go ahead and say the Diamondbacks ultimately fall short. I think they're going to have an injury issue at some point. They're very thin as far as the rotation is concerned outside of their starting five right now. They're healthy. Their lineup is a little bit better, sure. I just don't think I can trust them to be able to perform as well as they did last year, and I think they're going to backslide a little bit. I think the innings are going to start to add up on guys like Gallen and Merrill, the way they had to ride them. I think Montgomery is a little bit older, has been able to handle that level of innings for a significant period of time now. He is the model of durability, and so he might be your insurance policy for them. But I'm just not buying the Diamondbacks being able to get one of those wild card spots. So for me, it's going to come down to the Pirates, the Cubs, or the Brewers. I'm going to say the Pirates kind of fall back as well. I think they're still a little young, even though I really like the pieces they've added around the periphery. Same thing for the Brewers, so give me the Chicago Cubs as the team that makes that final wild card spot. Really like the additions they made around the edges of this team and didn't lose any major pieces off of this roster. Really like the way the Cubs have started out the year, and I think there's more in the tank for them as they get down to the wire. So, who ultimately makes it to the World Series? I mean, everybody's pick's going to be the Dodgers or Braves. With the injury issue to Strider now, of course, Ohtani's out for the year as far as pitching. Give me the Dodgers to still make it to the World Series. They are that talented, and they can add whatever they don't have right now at the deadline. Give me the Dodgers to make it to the World Series. Who do I have winning the World Series? Give me the Rangers once again. I just think the pitching ultimately is going to be what gets things done for Texas. With Glasnow and Yamamoto at the top of that rotation, they're a lot better with the LA Dodgers. Buehler's coming back, etc. I still think the Rangers are going to have significantly better depth. I think they're going to be able to add the bullpen pieces that they need, much like the Dodgers are going to be able to. And 1 through 9 in that lineup, the Rangers are a significantly better team than the LA Dodgers. Now, the Dodgers are very top-heavy, and Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman and Smith might be all you need to get the job done offensively. But in a series, when we get into the playoffs, those issues become much more pronounced for the other hitters in that lineup, and I just think the Texas Rangers probably win this one in 6. So, give me the Rangers in 6 over the Dodgers to win the World Series. All right, now I told you guys some headlines that had been happening around Major League Baseball. We'll start with the biggest and most obvious one. Injuries. Holy smokes. I mean, we heard many stories about Major League Baseball Players Association, voicing their displeasure with the pitch clock and injuries are up and all those kinds of things. I don't think it has a darn thing to do with the pitch clock. And I think the doctors have made it abundantly clear that they don't believe it has anything to do with the pitch clock either. I know a lot of you guys, anecdotally, in case you guys don't know what that necessarily means, I know a lot of you guys on Twitter like to throw out there, well, if they're throwing harder, if they're throwing with more in shorter time periods between max effort pitches, this is obviously an issue for them as far as recovery. There's time between pitches still. It's not like they're throwing one and then immediately throwing another pitch. They have time to gather themselves, get ready, and then throw another pitch. We're just trying to eliminate the dead time in baseball games. There's no reason that the pitch clock and still being able to maintain pitchers' health can't happen. This should be an easy fix if people would stop looking at anecdotal evidence instead of what the actual doctors are telling you. They're telling you the pitch clock isn't the issue. It's the max effort, and it's the way they're throwing the ball. Foul Territory had a great interview with the Rangers team physician Kevin Meester, who did the surgery on Spencer Strider. You guys absolutely should check that one out on YouTube or on TikTok. I watched the full explanation from Dr. Meester anyway on TikTok. He was absolutely perfect in his explanation of what's causing these issues. He first started out talking about how Tommy Johns in general used to last 10 years or would get one for your career and you'd be done. Then it got to about 10 years, 7 or 8 years, 5 years. Now we're talking 3 to 5 years is what the expectancy is on one of these Tommy Johns. And why is that? Because all of the max effort, the intense, extreme grip they're having to put on the baseball now, that tacky stuff has been taken out of the game, and then the horizontal movement of pitches. Players at the minor league level, at colleges, youth baseball are being taught to use these techniques at significantly higher rates, and they are seeing an increase in injuries as well. They don't have the pitch clocks that Major League Baseball does. At least some of those leagues don't, and yet they're still seeing an increase in those injuries. You guys tell me, is it a pitch clock issue or is it a max effort issue? And what the doctors are telling you, the horizontal break on the ball, the power changeup, the power curveball, the sweeper slider, those pitches that move 20 inches from one side of the plate to the other. That's what Dr. Kevin Meester was saying as far as what's causing the increase, the severity of the injuries that they're having, and injuries to other muscle groups up the kinetic chain that had never been injured before. You look at Max Scherzer, when he was talking during this interview, all I could think in my head was the injury to Max Scherzer last year. Starts out the year injured, having some poor performance. Of course, he has some issues with the shoulder, and then he has the teres major strain in the back half of the season that he ultimately is able to work his way back and get into the postseason. Those are muscle groups that Dr. Meester word for word described as muscle groups that had never been affected on a Major League Baseball pitcher before, and it's because of the pitchers, because of the pitches they are using. And Max Scherzer was case in point for what he was talking about last year. Now, he talked about what you could do to kind of minimize these things. He's saying you don't necessarily need to outlaw these pitches. He's not advocating for that at all. But what he is trying to say is that by having them do it as often and as frequently as they are doing it, it's definitely increasing and compounding the risk for these injuries to happen. Now, all of these things obviously add one little bit on top of another. We're talking about, if you're feeling a little pain in one part of your arm, maybe you compensate by throwing it a little bit differently, which then causes another muscle group to be affected. And then you might have some bigger issues down the line for health concerns. And we saw that a little bit with Max Scherzer last year, where he started with the shoulder issue, came back from injury, and then 3-4 weeks later, then he had the teres major strain after he'd really shown the ability to throw around a 2 ERA and was the Rangers' best pitcher in August, had that injury, and that's the muscle groups he was talking about that had never been affected before. Now, as far as the early season returns on injury, looking at Spencer Strider and so many other starting pitchers who have really fallen early here in the season, it's a tough break. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that these injuries were completely foreseeable either. But what I am saying is that the way baseball is played now, the way Kenley Jansen said it as well, the baseballs feel different as well. They're outlawing the tacky stuff more than they ever have. They're doing the inspections before innings, after innings, in between innings, all those kinds of things. Those are all having a tiny impact, and then you get to the minor league level, the collegiate level, the youth baseball level, where they're throwing significantly more off-speed power pitches than they ever have in Major League Baseball or ever have in baseball history, and then we're seeing the injuries start to pile up, not just on the pro side. If you guys, I would seriously invite you guys to check out Dr. Meester's interview on Foul Territory. Absolutely mind-blowing the way he was able to describe the injuries, how he was describing when he's in the exam room with the pitchers, how he's having them show them how they're gripping the baseball, how much force they're exerting on certain points of that baseball. And Dr. Meester is immediately able to point at it and say, there's the issue right there. How much force you're putting on that ball to get it to spin just right. Increased velocity, increased spin rate have a big-time correlation with the amount of injuries that we've seen over the last 5-10 years. We're not just talking about it in the pitch clock era. It's just continuing to get worse. And Dr. Meester was asked if he saw this kind of plateauing or getting better at some point, or see if it was going to completely go off the rails. He said it's going to continue to get worse at this rate, because it's not just Major League Baseball that's been affected. It's collegiate injuries. It's youth baseball injuries. He said he did 243 Tommy Johns last year. He's at 70, and it's April 15th. He said he's expecting to do another 40 in April alone. That's 110, and we still have 5 months of Major League Baseball to get through, let alone summer ball for college and youth sports. And we're not even talking about winter ball. He's going to crush 300 Tommy Johns before the end of the year. I mean, from a business perspective, great. He gets to do more surgeries, make more money, all those kinds of things. It's not what he's about. He wants to solve the issue. He's got his money. He's looking to be able to solve the injury issues, and that's what he went on Foul Territory to kind of explain how these injuries are happening and what options players, coaches, teams, Major League Baseball, colleges, youth baseball organizations have to solve some of these issues. And he says there's a lot of data that we have now on these injuries, but nobody's really looked into what's causing these problems. And clearly he believes it's causing from the exertion on the baseball, and he believes it's causing from the max effort, the horizontal movement of the pitches. He pointed out two guys on the Texas Rangers who do it very differently than most pitchers nowadays. Dane Dunning and Cody Bradford on the Rangers. Remember, he's the Rangers team physician, so he has all of their medicals easily right in front of him at all times. Dane Dunning and Cody Bradford don't use that 20-inch break moving right to left, left to right. They don't put that extreme force on the baseball, and that's what Dr. Meester is quoting here, as those guys shouldn't have those same issues that some of these other pitchers who use max effort, who use that horizontal movement, an extreme grip on the baseball, that are having these injury issues. Max Scherzer, I thought, was the case study that he was basically mentioning without saying any names. He mentioned the actual muscle group that Max Scherzer tore last year, had the injury to, and he was the only pitcher that I can remember anyway having that injury last year, and he mentioned that muscle group in particular as having one of the kinetic, going up the kinetic chain as to what these injuries are causing. So keep your eyes peeled in this space for what Major League Baseball does. Major League Baseball, before the season, released the results of the study that basically said there's no significant correlation between pitch clock and injuries. And I know there's all kinds of anecdotal evidence. Well, what are you talking about? More max effort, shorter time to recover? Come on, guys. It's still a shorter time, but they still have time to recover. They still have time to be able to gather themselves, take a breath or two, get the sign, get ready, and then throw another pitch. It's not like they're throwing back-to-back 100-mile-an-hour fastballs within 3 seconds. They have time to recover, and it's just the max effort they're putting on it as far as velocity and spin, pressure on the ball to kind of get it to do what they want it to do, to spin itself, and then, of course, the horizontal break on the ball. And those were the biggest issues Dr. Meester has been noticing, that almost every single one of the Tommy Johns that he's been doing, it's the guys that are having that extreme pressure on the ball, the extreme break from right to left, left or right, the guys that are whipping that arm, the guys that are using that high velocity and using it excessively. Now, like I said, he's not advocating for those guys to get rid of the pitches entirely, but he is saying that the combination of using the pitch and how often you're using it, how much grip you have, how much movement you have, is all compounding to increase the injury risk that you have, and we're seeing it continue to get worse. And we're going to continue to see it probably for a few more years, according to Dr. Meester. So even if Major League Baseball comes out and says, hey, we've figured out what you need to do. You need to decrease the amount of force that you have on the ball. We've figured out a substance that you can use besides a rosin bag for extra grip on the baseball, so that way you're not having to extremely grip that ball as hard as you possibly can to get the spin rate that you want. All the sticky stuff that they were using before they cracked down on it was actually helping them reduce the amount of injuries that they were having, because they weren't having to grip quite as hard, because that stuff was keeping the grip that they needed to get the spin. Well, then we saw them take away the sticky stuff. Injuries continue to go up even more so now, since that has basically been eliminated. And what's the cause there? Well, now they're having to put more stress, more grip, more force on that baseball. So hopefully Major League Baseball Players Association and Major League Baseball executives can come up with something along with these doctors to solve the issue for these teams. For these players. I mean, it is an important team building thing that he mentioned in there as well. The team that wins the World Series is usually the team that's healthiest and playing the best at the end of the season. You look at the Texas Rangers, for instance, they were still without Jacob deGrom. Max Scherzer wasn't his full self, but they had so many starting pitchers that were healthy at the right time, they were able to get the job done. You look at a team like the Dodgers, who really had a mash unit in their starting rotation by the end of the year. They really didn't have enough juice to be able to to get the job done. And I think the same thing is going to happen this year. Whichever team is healthiest, playing the best, is the team that's going to win the World Series. So we shall see if they're able to solve these issues. Alrighty, so what else was I mentioning earlier? I was mentioning about the Rookie of the Year race. Evan Carter had a great postseason last year, great final week of the season, along with Wyatt Langford and, the Angel Hernandez thing, now that I remember. We'll finish up our discussion on the Rookie of the Year first. I think one of the two Rangers is probably going to be the guy that wins the award. But like I said earlier, it could be what happened with Shohei last year, where two Rangers finished second and third because they're just going to gobble up votes from one another. So we'll see if one guy kind of emerges above the other in that AL Rookie of the Year race. Now, the Angel Hernandez saga continues from an umpiring perspective. I'm going to try to be as diplomatic here in the beginning as I possibly can and then really get in on it. So we'll start with the politically correct way of looking at this. Both sides have something that they can use here looking at this through a lens. All umpires make mistakes. All umpires make correct calls. All umpires have bad days. All umpires have good days. There's the politically correct version. Now let's get into what's really happening. Angel Hernandez should not ever umpire a Major League Baseball game again. Period. Play that on a loop. Send it to Angel Hernandez. Send it to Major League front office. There is no reason that he should still be on a Major League Baseball field. I don't care what they have to do. He should not be on the baseball field. He's just too inconsistent. He reminds me a lot of the umpires of old that would, like Joe West, who would like to make the story about them, the game about them to a certain extent, interject themselves, say it's umpire's discretion, my strike zone's the strike zone, it ain't what some computer box tells you. That's what Angel Hernandez reminds me of. The thing is, he's not exactly accurate enough to have those discussions with anybody at this point. And we're not just talking behind the plate either. He makes some egregious calls out there at third base, second base, first base, balk calls, check swings. It's absolutely abysmal. I told you guys earlier, Angel Hernandez has cost multiple teams already in 2.5 weeks, multiple games. You look at the Texas Rangers, they won 12-8 against the Houston Astros. They still won the game. The run differential by the umpire scorecard was a 2.5 run differential for the Houston Astros. Wyatt Langford struck out on a pitch that was 7 inches off the plate. If he swung his bat, he could not reach it if he lunged for it. Period. Could not happen. And Angel Hernandez called him out on it. That's one game. We're talking about the Minnesota Twins. I watched Joe Ryan throw a pitch right down Broadway that would have ended the inning and gotten them out of it. Out of a tough bases loaded jam. The pitch is right down the middle of the plate. The pitcher ends up walking the guy, single to the next hitter, scores 3 runs in the inning. The inning should have been over. Strike 3, batter was looking at it right down Broadway. What does Angel Hernandez do? It's a ball. Minnesota Twins ultimately lose the game because of that call. We saw it in the Yankees game earlier. Check swing calls have been brutal. I'm kind of burying the guy a little bit, but there was a time Angel Hernandez was a good umpire. Don't get me wrong. There was a time for the Joe Wests and the other umpires of the world that had their impact on the game and had their fingerprint and their pulse on the game itself. Now's not that time. We have the technology. There is zero reason for them not to go to an automatic strike zone after this season. And the Angel Hernandez might be the single reason they need to be able to get the job done to convince pitchers and hitters on both sides, coaches, that they need to get this done. Him alone making those calls might be enough reason to be able to get the job done, let alone all the other umpires. There's been a lot of umpires who've had significantly questionable calls here in 2.5 weeks. We need to take that responsibility away from them at this point. It's causing too many problems, too many ejections, too many confrontations, and the game I just think would be played a lot faster and a lot more accurately than any time ever before. They can concentrate more on balks. They can concentrate more on check swings. They can concentrate more on safe and out calls. They can concentrate more on all kinds of things that they are managing. The pitch clock that they have to take care of. They can handle, all kinds of different issues and put their attention on those as opposed to balls and strikes. There was a few ball and strike calls early this season. The umpire literally has their eyes closed in the still picture of the check swing where it hits their bat, and instead they call it a ball and batter goes to first base. There's been instances where their eyes are literally closed, pitch is right down the middle, and they call it a ball. There's been instances where it literally hits the batter, and because the home plate umpire didn't see it or foul tipped because their eyes were closed, that they need to address these things more significantly, and allowing them to make other calls more significant, take better care of those calls rather than focusing on ball strikes would certainly improve the quality and accuracy of the game. Everything is about improving the game on the field. You look at NFL, they try to improve offense. They try to improve player safety. You look at the NBA, the evolution of the hand checking has basically gone away in that sport. They don't allow you to sit in the paint and just, for 5-10 seconds and just sit there and not allow you to get to the rim. They force you to get out of the lane. 3-second violation. The NHL, scoring is up, hitting is down. They take away a lot of those issues in all other sports. Major League Baseball did a great job making huge strides towards improving the game last year. Larger base sizes, pitch clock, pitch out violations, pickoff violations. They did a great job implementing changes. They need to continue to do so and not just say, well, we fixed the game for the next 100 years. We'll see you 100 years from now and see what else we need to fix. They need to continue to try to improve this game. I was reading several articles today about the money Major League Baseball is making off of their national TV money deals, and almost all of those deals, all of the broadcast networks are looking at themselves going, why are we paying this much? The model just doesn't support the money that they're spending to be able to cover the World Series, the Home Run Derby, Sunday Night Baseball, the leadoff on Peacock, Friday Night Baseball on Apple TV. All of those networks are all questioning the amount of money they're spending on Major League Baseball. So while you improved the game last year, and it's a better product, Peacock, after 1 year of the leadoff game on Sunday mornings that started at 10 o'clock Central or 11 o'clock Central, those games, while they are early, yes, Peacock is paying $30-35 million a year for those deals. The reason why it hasn't started yet is because they couldn't agree to the money to be able to get the deal done again for this year. They saw an improved product on the field, and it needs to continue to improve to increase the money that they're making, or at least keep the level of money that they're getting from these organizations. ESPN, for instance, signed a 8-year deal, 7-year deal. They have an opt-out in 2025. ESPN is most certainly opting out of the deal that they signed with Major League Baseball unless they can get their numbers up before then. And getting better, getting better accuracy on the field, allowing the play on the field to actually matter more and be able to be focused on more rather than, well, I guess the umpire's having his, vision checked at some point, or this umpire had his eyes closed when the batter hit the ball. Those are issues that are easily correctable. Much like we saw with the pitch clock solving a lot of the dead time in a game, I think this is the next easy, logical thing that they can do to keep interest in the game. So, appreciate you guys joining us. I told you guys earlier that, we had a lot of fun with you guys this offseason covering the hot stove season, the NBA trade deadline, and then had some significant developments on a personal level here with us. Touched on a little bit of those last night. Derek Lively, I mentioned he had lost his mother. He's the center for the Dallas Mavericks. Very unexpectedly, after just announcing it to the team on, I believe, Friday before the game, um, basically saying his mother was in the hospital and could go at any point. Literally moments after he finished that speech in the locker room saying, hey, I got to take some time away from the team, he gets the call his mother had passed. My thoughts are very much with Derek Lively and his family. Um, we had some issues like that with our family that touched us very close to home. Um, my fiance, who is a very big part of what I do here, as far as how I get the word out to you guys that I'm doing the lives, um, her mother unexpectedly passed away, and definitely been a tough couple of months. Had some more crazy news, very similar to like that today, but luckily everybody's okay. It sounds like, and everybody's still kind of going through the last couple of months. It's been a tough one. Before all of that stuff happened, we've had multiple illnesses in our family, and that took out my voice for multiple periods of time. And Mark, I know you checked on me a few times. I appreciate that. But we're getting better. Not, it's going to be months until I'm fully recovered. It's anyway, but at this point, I just thought it was time to get back to sports, back to something I had known, really enjoyed, and even though my voice might crack, it might give out at certain points, might need to press mute every now and again. I might not be able to do a full 3-hour live at right off the bat here until I get my full voice back. Getting through this last couple of months has been very challenging for us, and I appreciate those of you who reached out over the last couple of months with your well wishes. So, thank you guys for that. Had some winter weather, hailstorms, if you will, anyway, affect us here as well to the house, but everything's fine there. We got all that patched up and ready to tackle the month of April and get into a fun postseason for basketball. It's not the playoffs yet. Remember, basketball does not consider the play-in tournament to be playoffs as far as their statistical records. So be curious to see how they solve that going forward. But kind of keep that in mind when you're watching the play-in over the next couple of days. Check out our video that we posted last night, our live that we did, our discussion about the play-in tournament, the playoff predictions, all those kinds of things. Really excited about the NBA playoffs this year. NHL playoffs are right around the corner. Two of my favorite teams, the Mavericks and the Stars, are one of the top 3 to 5 contenders for both of those titles. And what a year it would be to kind of win the first World Series in Rangers history, and then turn around and win the NBA Finals or the Stanley Cup. That would be something. I told you guys at the beginning of the video, I've seen 3 championships really in my lifetime. I don't count the Cowboys championships. I was way too young. I was actually living in South Dakota at the time when they won them. My teams, the first one I can remember was the Dallas Stars in 1999 anyway. When they had that celebration, the Yellow Rose of Texas playing, the stars are shining in Texas. That was the big thing I remember, but I was still very young. The first real championship I remember being very emotional for, right behind me on the green screen. Let me see if I can pop this down and see if it'll show it a little bit. You can see the bottom of it right here. Dirk Nowitzki holding the Larry O'Brien trophy and the NBA Finals trophy. That was the first one I really remember and having a huge impact on me. I was 20 years old at the time. First real championship I was able to celebrate with me and my dad. It was fantastic. And then the Rangers go out there and win the World Series this year, or last fall anyway. That was absolutely unbelievable. So hopefully we get some more fun events like that here soon for those of us who are Mavericks or Stars fans. So like I said, check out our NBA preview video that we put out yesterday. Mark, thanks so much. Been thinking of you and your family for sure. Appreciate that, Mark. Those of you who reached out on our Facebook anyway, tried to get back to as many of you as I could. But thank you guys for all the well wishes and support. It's been a lot of fun doing this for you guys, and we're going to try to get back into it a little bit more. Starting up a sports trading card business as well. Upside Sports Cards is what it's going to be on eBay once I finally get it going. Been trying to do that for months, but all the issues that we've been having, that I just mentioned anyway, certainly put a wrench in those plans. So hopefully we get that one going here in the next couple of weeks. Appreciate those of you who joined us here tonight. We will be doing multiple lives every week going forward, checking in on the standings, injuries, baseball, basically the status of the game. We'll probably do some lives every single week. I think last year we tried to do at least two live baseball games every single week. We will probably end up doing more this year as I get healthier, as my voice gets better. It's about to go, so I don't have too much longer, but we'll probably be doing one or two games to start off, and by May, hopefully we get up to three. And then once we get into June, July, I can do 4 or 5 lives every single week for you guys. We'll probably try to do a play-in game if possible. I'm not sure I can go that long at this point yet. That's still a 3.5-hour live. I don't know if my voice has got it. I mean, we're talking an hour 18 and it's about to go right now. So, anyway, appreciate those of you who have stuck by us through our long hiatus there. But rest assured, the hiatus is over. We are back. Posted a video today about the Yankees, Ohtani, and the Dodgers, mentioning our live that we were going to do tonight. Make sure you guys check that one out on YouTube. Make sure you guys hit that like, subscribe, follow us on Twitter or X, whatever they're calling themselves now, at Upside SN, on Facebook, Upside Sports Network as well. Appreciate all the well wishes. And hopefully we have a great baseball season ahead. I had a lot of fun covering it with you guys last year. Had a lot of fun, especially after the season. Hot stove season, off-season basketball, off-season anything is really where I really love to dig into the numbers. NFL draft is coming up this month. Probably won't be able to do round 1. Round 3 through 7 is not exactly, round 4 through 7 anyway isn't exactly great television. But I will try to do some draft videos for you guys as well. So make sure you guys check out our content. NHL playoff preview videos as well should be coming shortly. And really hope all of you guys stick with us on this journey. Had a lot of fun with you guys last year covering baseball, and we're going to do even more this year. So thank you guys. Hats off to all you guys for all the support that you guys have given us. And hopefully we can reward you for your support and give you as much content as you can possibly handle. So thank you guys, and we'll see you guys again probably tomorrow night. We will definitely see you on Wednesday with our next baseball live anyway. Tomorrow we might do a play-in game. So keep your eyes peeled. Depending on how my voice is after working all day tomorrow, we'll see if I still have enough left to be able to do a live that long. We'll see. I'm not optimistic, but we shall try. But thank you guys again. We'll see you guys again tomorrow night.